Hi guys, welcome back to another playthrough of a demo game. We're going to be playing the Vigilante Diaries again. We got through the prologue, the demo. This time we're going to be heading into the chapter 1. We're only going to be spending about 30 minutes to an hour on this. Also, we gotta make sure my capture is actually capturing sound of this game. Come on. It says no. There we go. Okay. Back over here. Check over here. Once again, I am playing on Twitch, so if there's anyone in chat messaging me, I will be responding to them. I don't expect anybody in today. It's been kind of a slow week. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Never necessary, mandatory, demanded, or anything else. It's just if you feel like it. Not new game. Oh my goodness, not new game. So let's continue. Alright, so just a refresher on my stats. Level 5 order, 0 for nerve, -4, so I'm closer to pacifist on aggression. Secrecy, I'm at 0. Physical, I'm at 1, so I'm a little more tanning. Thought is 0. Stability is 2, so I'm a little more sane. And accuracy is 0. With my relationships, we don't have any with anybody. Once again, we are starting Chapter 1, 1985, Origins. And here we go. May 3rd, 1952, year 0. There was a psychological profile in the article. Some things were just pure bullshit, but I have to say, some of the other things were spot on. Still really like this photo. Working class citizens, an extremely reserved person, probably a war veteran, either Korean or Vietnam. Yeah, I guess that's pretty much me. But I'm not just that. I was born in 1952, years after World War II. I grew up on the stories of American soldiers liberating Europe from the Nazis. The Uncle Sam posters, the Times Square kissing picture, fighting for truth, justice, and the American way, and all that. I guess all of those glorified war stories have something to do with that, with what I do now. Of course, then came Korea, and after that, Vietnam. Spending 13 months in Hue and Saigon probably also have something to do with what I do now in these streets. Anyway, I was born in a working class family. I wouldn't say we were poor as church mice, but we weren't exactly well-heeled either. I grew up in a hole in the wall on the 3rd floor of the 19th Monroe Avenue at the intersection of Benson and 10th. But it could have been anywhere. All working class neighborhoods were similar back then. Men coming home with sore backs after an endless day of work. Women keeping order in a tiny 600 square foot apartment full of children where there was never any silence. Children wearing hand-me-downs from their older siblings. Tobacco smoke filling the living rooms, a black and white television set in some houses, a radio in all of them. Electric radiators in winter, children cooling off with the fire hydrants in summer, peanut butter sandwiches in McKinley Park. That was considered a happy childhood in the 1950s. My dad worked at the docks, another working class hero. As far as I can tell, and despite having hardly any education, he was a well-read guy, beyond the Western dime novels, I mean. He even read Steinbeck, when he was in France during the war. I guess the Grapes of Wrath had a lot to do with him being being president of the Steve Doris Union chapter. If you have a problem with your boss, talk to Frank Donovan, they used to say. Mom didn't look anything like a poster housewife of the 1950s. First of all, because she wasn't a housewife, no matter how much father insisted she quit her job. Esther Donovan is not a kept woman, she always replied. So she served tables at Angelo's Steakhouse, a restaurant just north past the interstate towards Greenville. All the neighbors said Esther wore the pants in the Donovan house, and they were right. My mom was quite the character. I'm not saying she wasn't sweet and loving, but overall, she was as tough as nails and as wise as King Solomon. And then there was my older brother Paul. He was 1 year older than me, but we almost looked like twins, 2 peas in a pod. A brother at that age means everything: a friend, a confidant, a playmate, and sometimes a rival, someone to fight with over who gets the last piece of mom's cherry pie or some other trifle. We collected trading cards, played baseball together, watched The Lone Ranger together, read Dad's comics together. We were always together. And then there was me, Rhea Donovan. I worry about writing my full name here in case someone finds and reads this journal. It's just an absurd worry. If someone finds this journal, it's because they've caught me, and there are much worse things here in my hideout. So, I believe that I'm the protagonist of this story, an average Joe. No remarkable traits, except one. Let's see, my dad's principle, my mom's sincerity, my brother's recklessness. So, nerve, thought, +1 dad, negative aggressive, negative nerve, +1 mom, +2 aggression, -1 thought. +2 aggression, -1 thought, +1 Paul. I kind of want to check out my stats real quick. So we can go back. Thought is negative. Who do I want to be closer to? Brother. Paul and I not only looked alike, I don't know if the short fuse was hereditary or if I just copied it directly from my older brother. He often acted before he thought, and although it is true that this caused him a lot of problems, sometimes it gave him an advantage. He was unpredictable, and that made him more dangerous, just like me on the streets. I'm headed towards Dole. And then we read this last time, but Paul was my older brother. We were only a year apart. We almost looked like twins, like 2 peas in a pod. Another child in the house at that age meant everything. A friend, a confidant, a playmate. The Donovan Boys, July 11, 1956. One of my earliest memories is visiting my father at the port. I still remember the smell. A mix of sea, salt, fuel, sweat, and smoke. A busy place, almost all day long. And noisy as fuck, too. If it wasn't Steve, Doris, and sailors screaming at each other, it was the sound of mechanical cranes or the squawking of seagulls. At the time, I didn't understand exactly what my father did for a living. I was too young to know what a union president was. All I knew was that he worked at the port, but he didn't load cargo or run a ship or operate cranes. I just knew that he spent all day in a small office on the docks, which he called the shit house. That was Frank Donovan at his best. Subtlety was never his strong suit. The shit house became another playground for my brother and me. We spent hours in that place, as if it was our own house. For my father, it was the headquarters from where he fought for the rights of dock workers alongside his union buddies. Donovan boys, they called them. But there were some things my father couldn't take care of from inside the shithouse, especially when there were problems with the shipping companies. At that time, the shipping companies had established what was known as open shop. In other words, free hiring of workers. Being non-union for a longshoreman meant that there was no wage regulation, no control over overtime, and no paid leave. And that's why Dad had been on the picket line with his boys for several days to paralyze the city port. Without dock workers, the port was as useless as fishnet. I'm not reading that word. You can read that word if you want. The city was losing money hand over fist. Even so, the negotiations had gone awry several times already. The shipping companies were desperate, but Dad was used to dealing with tougher, meaner, and more dangerous people. And even though those guys always said that Frank Donovan was stubborn Irish bastard, yeah, they were right. However, my mother wasn't pleased with the situation either. She took my brother and me to the port to see him one Friday afternoon. I must have been 4 or 5 at the time. The situation we found there was not what we expected. Things were heating up. On one side of the picket line were Donovan's boys. On the other side, the cops. I saw my dad yelling like a maniac. He flipped the bird to the cops at least twice. My father saw us arriving and immediately ran over to us. He was sweating and looked agitated. "Esther, why did you bring the kids here, damn it? Dad lowered his voice. I heard what he said, but didn't understand a word anyway. "Those fuckers are threatening to call in the National Guard if we don't disband immediately." "Then disband," my mother replied. "These kids haven't seen their father in 8 days, Frank. You have a family outside of the port, too." I know, and that's why I'm doing this, Esther. Please, take the kids home. We'll talk later, please." I interrupted them. See, I heeded my dad's words. "Mom, please, let's go home." I tried to convince Dad, please come with us." Or I tried to act brave. "I'm not leaving, I'm staying with you, Dad." Let's see. -1 mom, +1 dad, +1 mom, +1 dad. I'm a kid. I don't want to try and act brave. I probably would try and be like, "Dad, please come home with us." Doing kid things. Let's get on Mom's good side. Dad smiled at me. Then he put his arms around my shoulder. "I know you want me to go home, son, but look." He pointed to the picket line. "Do you see all those people? Right, Rhea?" 100 men were there, holding banners with no to the open shop" and "It's up to the mayor." The police were were there now. That's my friend Billy, my friend Stan, my friend Seb. They all want to go home and be with their kids too, but we've all got to stick together, so... My mom came over and spoke quietly to my father. She didn't want my brother and me to hear what she was saying, but I still heard it anyways. Frank, listen. I understand what you do and why you do it, but you don't always have to be on the front line. Then she added in an even quieter voice, you run enough risk hanging out with certain people. My father stared oh my goodness, let me try that again. My father stared at her in silence. He ran his hand over his forehead and took a breath. I noticed that my father was hesitating about what to do, but then time ran out. The police charged. The screams of the longshoremen drowned out everything else. There was no time for anything else. My father threw a bunch of keys at my mom. To the shithouse! Get in there with the kids and lock the door, he shouted as he ran towards the now breached picket line. And do not come out, you hear me? We lost sight of Dad in the turmoil. We just heard him screaming, you motherfuckers, leave us alone! As young as my brother and I were, we couldn't take our eyes off of the scene. The police handed out thwacks left and right without mercy. Blows to the legs, to the arms, to the heads, or directly to the face. It was brutal. Donovan boys ran with their faces covered in blood. A group of them fought back. They set fire to some of the machinery pieces, and a huge column of black smoke emerged in the middle of the dock. The whole city was going to know what had just happened on the pier, and not just from the newspaper. When things calmed down, almost an hour after the incident, we left the shithouse. We walked along the port. It had been raised from top to bottom. A police officer looked at us on our way out. He seemed so surprised to see a woman with 2 children that he didn't even question us. He just let us go. My father returned home at midnight. A Lincoln Continental brought him. The driver was a guy with a tiny mustache. The one in the front passenger seat. A guy with curly black hair and olive skin. Took him to the door and shook his hand. I noticed Dad was visibly uncomfortable. He went inside, and my brother and I hugged him as soon as he walked through the door. My mother did not. She just looked at him from the kitchen with a stern face and asked him who that was. Just a friend. And with that, my father settled it. We never spoke about the dock incident again. Mother, we got a +1. Okay, so we've already read this in the last one, but we'll read this again. My mother didn't look at all like the postcard housewives from the 1950s. My mom had a strong character. I'm not saying by that my mother wasn't kind and loving, but overall she was a tough and fair person. June 2nd, 1957. My brother was a baseball nut. He never took off his Red Sox cap that Uncle Doug had brought back from Boston. He even had a bat signed by Sandy Koufax. I must admit that I didn't care much about baseball except for the trading cards. I loved them. Our collection was amazing. We had all the starters of the era. Al Kali, Whitney Ford, Ray Boone, Mickey Mantle. Some Sunday afternoon, we would go to McKinley Park after church to trade leftover cards with other kids. a melting pot of Irish, Greek, Puerto Rican, and Italian American kids gathered and traded cards, shouting like crazy as if they were street vendors. Usually, we all respected the rules of the game. From time to time, you could find a clueless kid who didn't know what that. Oh my goodness. From time to time, you could find a clueless kid who didn't know what his Roy Campanella card was worth, but that was considered fair game. But there are others who didn't respect the rules, like Tiny Theo. His name was Theodorus Macropolius. Ooh, I'm not the best at names, sorry y'all. But someone had to give him that nickname because the kid was fucking huge, almost twice as big as the rest of the kids, both tall and wide. Tiny Theo was a shady character. We knew that because Paul had had some bad experiences with him. Every time someone did business with Tiny Theo, they learned a valuable lesson. Paul hated his guts. That's why we never traded cards with him. Tiny Theo was just a nuisance that most of us traders avoided. But not all the kids who came to McKinley Park on Sundays knew him. This time, it was Louis Argree's turn. He was one of the youngest kids there, not even 6 years old, but Tiny Theo didn't care about that. We saw Tiny Theo take a large deck from Louis's hands in exchange for a single card. Unless that was a limited edition signed by Babe Ruth himself, that was foul play. Tiny Theo was walking away from Louis. The poor kid didn't even flinch. He still didn't quite get what had just happened with his deck. Bully, Tiny Theo. And then, without a word, Paul headed straight for Tiny Theo. I asked him what the hell he was doing. I'm going to get that kid's deck back, damn it. So, I'm definitely not strong enough for this, so I joined my brother. We'll go together against that fucker. I told him to help Louis, so that gives me one thought. Why don't we just give him some of our spare cards to that poor kid? Or I told him to stay out of it. I probably wouldn't do that. I would help the kid. So this is the one we're going to do. And Paul, we won't be able to beat Tiny Theo in a fight, and we both know it. I spoke slowly, waiting patiently while Tiny Theo was walking away. Just look at the poor kid, man. Louis Argree was just now realizing what had happened to him. We were seconds away from him bursting into tears. My brother thought about it for a second. While it's true that he wanted to teach Tiny Theo a lesson, more than anything else, he also felt really sorry for Louis Argree. Yeah, you're right, he grunted, accepting the harsh truth. Let's give some cards to Louis, but only the spares, okay? We waited until we lost sight of Tiny Theo. We called over Louis, who came up to us with a blank stare of an abandoned puppy. Paul handed him a pack of spare cards we had, and Louis's face lit up. Oh, thank you so much. And then he left, smiling from ear to ear. Paul looked at me. I knew for a fact that he was mad about not beating Tiny Theo, but he felt good about helping the poor kid. You're a good guy, Rhea. Let's go home. Come on. Cool. We're not so dull anymore. May 23rd, 1958. Playing in the big league. My mother loved to play cards. Twice a month, on Saturday nights, when she was free at Angelo's, she would set up a game at home. That night, as we finished dinner, my mother spoke to me as we did the dishes. Ria, are you up for a game tonight? It was the first time my mother had offered to play cards with me. I thought it was an exciting challenge, something for grown-ups, so I said yes without hesitation. But I'm warning you, this is a big league, she said as she finished placing the plates on the dish rack. Don't expect any special treatment just because you're the youngest. Understood? I wouldn't have expected anything else from my mother. Esther Donovan never sugarcoated anything. For years, it had just been her and my dad playing gin rummy, but Paul had recently joined the game, so they'd switched to the classic rummy. No home rules. Mom explained the rules to me in just 5 minutes. You have to match sets of 3 or more cards, either 3 of a kind or straight of the same suit. Like this. She spread out 4, 5, and 6 of spades on the table. This is called a medal. Medal? I'm not a card person. Sorry if I butchered that. The first player who medals all of his cards goes out and wins the round. And then the other players have to add up the points of the cards they have in their hand without a medal. Mom picked up all the cards and began shuffling them. Easy, isn't it? It seemed simple, even for my young age. We gathered around the table. I had Paul on my left and my mother on my right. She began to deal cards with confidence and a smile on her face. My father picked them up with a certain laziness. I don't think Dad was enthusiastic about rummy because he knew that playing with my mother meant losing. Paul and I, however, were very focused. There were a lot of variables to take into account, and we were inexperienced. We played a couple of hands, and one after another, my mother went out. Sometimes she even got rid of all of her cards. I'm going rummy, she said. That meant double points for the rest of us. She was giving us the beating of our lives. Mom knew the 3 of us like the back of her hand, and her game proved it. You have to pay attention to the cards, boys. Are you paying attention? I don't think so, she said teasingly. Paul was fuming. My father rolled his eyes, fed up with so much defeat. Esther, darling, you're such a sore winner, he said as I picked up the next card. Well, I'm sorry, my mother smirked as she put down the last trio of cards she had left in her hand, because I think Esther Donovan has won again. See, focus on Mom's game. Took a risk. Can't do that because I'm not... What is nerve again? Impulsive. I'm not impulsive. Sabotage Mom. Tried to say... Nah. Let's get on Mom's favor. So let's focus in on Mom's game. See what's actually going on here. I noticed my mother's expression as I was dealing. I noticed how she would sometimes frown slightly when she received a card. It was almost imperceivable. Paul and my father hadn't noticed, but I had, and that frown had to mean something. My hand wasn't so bad. I had a pair of deuces, 3 sevens, hearts, diamonds, spades, already medaled, a pair of jacks, and some high cards that didn't match. But I'd had a decent hands before, and Mom always managed to lay out first, probably because I hadn't been paying attention to what she was playing. I had to meddle my own hand without laying off anything that might suit her. So, I tried to keep looking at her face while she played. I was meddling my cards. I tried to pull out one of those frowns from Mom with my layoffs. Every time she did it, it was like a small victory for me. The game went on until Paul announced what seems like the greatest accomplishment of his short life. I'm going out. Yes, finally. Considering there were considering where we were coming from, that wasn't so bad. My mother gave me a knowing look. She knew what I was trying to do, but she was a skilled player. Mom had almost everything medaled except for an ace and a deuce. Only 3 points. Almost, she said. She stood up, filled with pride. Better luck next time, son. She ruffled my hair and went to the kitchen to get something to drink. It took me a while to understand what that rummy game meant to my mother, why she was so happy. Games aside, it was the first time she saw her younger son adapt and fight back, even if it hadn't worked out in the end. I think my mother was proud to see me standing on my own 2 feet. Nothing there. Yay, Mom likes us. I'm not reading this again. Okay, so I think we will pick up from here next time. This is June 16th, 1958. So a couple while later. Another little short video of this demo. I hope you guys are enjoying this. I kind of am too. If you don't like the decisions that I have, this demo is free to download. You can go and check it out yourself. It's a pretty cool game so far. I do like the stats, the -2, 1, 2, and the fact that they change based upon my own decisions. Let's see. Oh, hey, they added Chrissy. We don't know anything about her yet, but they added her here. See, we don't have a relationship with either one of these yet. Mom is +2, Paul is +1. I feel pretty good about things. So, yeah, thanks for joining the video, and we will see you guys back in the next one.